Hey, whoever's listening. Hey, whoever's listening out there. Just doing a little update on financial things going on. I've been meaning to mention it's April 5th today in the evening here in Tennessee, Eastern Standard Time. I wanted to mention a couple of things that are going on. First off, we have tons of layoffs happening, and one of the key indicators of recession slash depression is seeing jobless um, increase, the jobless numbers increase, layoffs increase, unemployment increase. The Fed wants to actually see these numbers go higher. They want to see people lose their jobs because they feel it will help lower inflation, which we know is not working. Raising these rates did not lower inflation at all. And so many knew this wasn't going to work. So while rates are being raised since last March, I think, every month, we are not seeing inflation being reduced, but we're seeing more and more of the destruction of the financial system because it's been way past the point of no return. And the economy is destroyed at this point. The world economy is in shambles. So the farce or the deception of it all is that the people look at the S&P 500, they look at the equity markets, ETFs, and they think that somehow there is hope for this economy because these numbers, which are fake, if you watch the markets, you can see just the fakeness of how it moves and the manipulation of how it is pushed in either direction that they want it to go. So it's amazing to watch how people's futures, which are based in this market, are based on fake algorithms that are just controlled by machines, which are controlled by the entities in control. But we've seen, I would say, hundreds of thousands of layoffs now. We know that the data isn't real, but now they had to report more unemployment at this point. But Amazon, I think, has laid off about 20,000 people already. Google, which is also Alphabet, has laid off thousands. PayPal, Indeed, Microsoft, Zoom, Yahoo, Affirm, Dell, SoFi, Spotify, Salesforce, and many, many other, especially tech companies. And I think we are about to see an implosion of the bubble of tech that is represented through the NASDAQ. And we're finally starting to see Tesla blow, that's deflating, which is way, way, way overpriced. But the other thing I wanted to talk about today is the de-dollarization. Obviously, in the world that's going on, we're seeing a lot more of that. I spoke about that a little bit on the last few videos and on many other videos. We know this is the petrodollar. I explained all of why that is. And if you're new here, you can go back to other videos or plenty other people on YouTube who explain our monetary system and how the US dollar is the world reserve currency since World War II, and how those things were implemented, how people's gold was taken and exchanged for these US dollars, how dollars are now just printed debt, and how the Fed took us off the gold standard in 71, how the world took us off the gold standard, the world elites who govern all of this. And now all the dollars we hold, which are really old debts, are backed by nothing but the faith of the world who hold them. And now we're seeing the world turn against the US dollar. And I think we're going to see this continue to happen and to snowball and to see more and more countries join BRICS, which is an entity of nations, large nations that are basically going to come off of the US dollar and trade in their own currencies. I've been talking about central bank digital currencies for a while and how there will be a one world bridge currency that will connect all currencies like the hub of a wheel. We'll see all the other central bank digital currencies representing their nation's currency, and the hub of that wheel being the one world currency, which will be able to exchange all currencies one for another. How that's all going to pan out and when, I don't know the timeline. There are many, many ideas out there. And I've shared some of those things too, but I wanted to just talk about oil right now because we saw oil rapidly rise in, what was it, 2022. And we knew, those of us who follow charting and know analytics of charts, the way how fast it went up, we knew there was going to be a pullback. There has to be, because nothing goes up in a straight line. And so the last several months of 2022 to 23, we've seen oil pull back to levels of support now, which is where it's going to just bounce off this level even higher than it was before. So what were we looking at? We were looking at gas costing around, I think it was $8 to $10 in places in California already in 2022. I think it was some places it was about 5 to 7 in New York. But I think we're going to be looking at gas prices between $10 to $15, perhaps at its peak before they bring the US dollar down for good. The script has to play out. There has to be this sense of battle of the US wanting to keep its currency as the world reserve currency because it has weaponized the dollar and it has basically enslaved other nations to have to come up with ways to earn dollars and make dollars out of real work, real energy. Whereas the US, and I'm not saying all of us people did this to the nations, but because we are Americans, we are responsible. We hold responsibility for that. And we have benefited from that. Even though we might not think so, we have benefited from that. So now we will see this war between, I hate to keep saying that word, but this battle between the other nations of the world battling against the US to bring down the US dollar as the world reserve currency. And that's going to take a course of time, but it's happening right before our eyes. Let us not be deceived or deluded into sleep to think that this is just going to, smooth over and it's going to be fine because, hey, we've used the dollar all of our lives and this really can't happen in our lifetime. It's not going to happen. It's going to happen. So what's going to happen, I believe, is that we're going to see, being this is a war over the petrodollar, we're going to see the dollar fall for a while Biden is in presidency, weaken the dollar with the weak president, make it look like the dollar's losing its power over the world. And petrol will go up. Commodities will go up. We're in a commodity super cycle right now. And so what we're going to see is the dollar, the petrodollar's demise over the next year to 2 years while Biden is still in presidency, weaken with the weak president. And while the dollar weakens, we will see all inverse trades to the dollar, especially precious metals, oil, and all kinds of commodities raise in price. That's my opinion, what I think is going to happen. Metals, precious metals, palladium, platinum, silver, gold, oil, all kinds of crude oil, all kinds of energy, all kinds of commodities, uranium, anything having to do with the earth, food, anything grown out of the earth, land even may go up in price, or may stay high in price. I know that right now we're going to see a crash in corporate real estate, and we know that that was planned through COVID. Many pulled out of corporate buildings and they're empty now, or primarily empty. And who's going to end up with the bill to these places? Who's paying the rent of these places? Who's holding the keys to these places? So that's probably the next leg to be pulled out from this economy, from this financial system, is the corporate real estate. But why did they plan that? Why did they want to pull people out of corporate buildings? There's always a nefarious reason. There's always a plan involved, and a multifaceted plan. So what are they going to use this corporate real estate for? That's the question. I'll let you look into that. I have my own ideas about it and may talk about those ideas in future videos. But first, we have to see the demise and the breakdown of corporate real estate, which is widespread, especially across the United States. Seeing things trickle out about smart cities, 15-minute cities, more and more, a lot about AI taking over jobs. And we will see all of that happen most likely as well. Got the dark side and the light side to that as well. So my main idea that I wanted to speak about was seeing that oil is now come down to support. I mean, it may fall a little bit more right now for the next couple of months. It may or may not, but it has reached support at $66 because they love that number, and bounced off of 66. And I think because I think we went up to about 120, or did we hit about 120, 130, I think. And so we went all the way up to 130. We came back down to 60, which is a major pullback. And I think we're going to now fly higher than 130 and probably reach new all-time highs. Back in the 2008, crisis, world crisis, financial crisis, oil had reached a price, I think, of about 140, 145. And I think we're going way past there. I think we could see 200 crude oil price, just my opinion. And that would put gas around $15 a gallon. But, and this is very sad, for the people, because of the hardship it's placing on all of us. There is some good news to what is coming as well. And I'm not going to focus that video on this because I just wanted to mention that we're probably going to see oil spike, but we're in a massive commodity cycle. And I've been talking about precious metals, and I know that we've never been taught to basically cherish precious metals and the value that's in them. I've talked many times about how gold and silver have honed, especially gold has held its value against the US dollar. Back in the 50s, you could buy a house with so much gold. And now if you were to, a certain amount of gold was worth a certain amount of dollars that could buy a house, say, right? And if you were to have that much gold and that much dollars now, it would, you could buy 3 houses and with the gold and no house with the dollars, because the value of the dollar has not held up, obviously. And we're seeing the last portion of that dollar value crushed. So I think we're going into a cycle now where we're going to see commodities take off for the next 2 years. And I've been saying that, and seeing the dollar pressed down, depressed, pushed down, and basically the nations of the world come against the dollar while Biden is in presidency. And then I think, and this is just my own theory, is that as a new president comes in, is placed in office, it will be a very strong, warlike president who will, probably defend the dollar, defend the United States, say, hey, you're not going to do this to us, and we want to remain the world reserve currency, and, we're going to fight the nations of the world. And we may go into world battle without using that W word. It's very possible, because I don't think they're going to let the U.S. go down without a fight. They have to make it appear that we fought for this. We tried to defend it. And the U.S. is going to basically have to lose that war. And I spoke about some things that may occur along the way in that battle. I said the word, but anyway. So the U.S. is going to have to lose that battle against the other nations, because the U.S. is going to lose world reserve currency status eventually, and probably sooner than we think. I think these things are going to play out over the next 3 years. By 25, I think we're going to see this completed. So all of this will happen between now and 25. I spoke about this timeline many times, and that I spoke about how, if people are being called to move, to get up geographically and move, if you're being called to take your fiat dollars and exchange them into precious metals, or if God is telling you to do something specific, sell your house, don't sell your house, whatever it is God is speaking right now, the voice of the Lord is the greatest asset in the world right now to us. The greatest asset in every realm is the voice of the Lord, because if we can hear God speak to us, we know we're going to be okay. And we can follow the voice of the Lord. And God will give us great wisdom, each one of us specifically for our lives and our families. But now is the time to move out on what God is saying. So I think that's the most important thing that we can do right now, because this year is a year of mercy. I had been speaking about when the banks were going down. I said, I believe there's going to be a time of mercy after these banks go down. Even though everybody thinks that the markets are going to crash, I think it's going to do the opposite. I think it's going to go up, because it's going to be a deceptive period of time where people are going to say, oh, wow, everything's okay now. They saved the banks. Everything's okay. They smoothed it over. Markets are going back up. I can breathe. That is the way I've studied this beast, and this is what the beast does. It's very deceptive, and it does that for a reason. And I think part of the reason that the beast does that to deceive people is because God wants us to hear God's voice. God doesn't want us to watch what happens in the beast system and think that that's real or that's true. And we're not to watch that. We can watch it and know that it's deceptive, but we need to hear the voice of the Lord. And God was showing me there's going to be a period of mercy, a period of grace, a time frame after this banking crisis, which we're still in, but we're going to probably see the markets go back up, and everybody will see them go back up, and there'll be a bifurcation. And that bifurcation would be, some would say, everything is okay now. We can relax and go back to partying in life. Pour me a glass of wine, And some people will say, wow, I better move out on what God has shown me. This is a period of mercy. I need to move. I need to move out now. I need to do what I've been told to do. This is a grace period for me. Thank you, God. Thank you for this grace period where I can take care of the things you've told me to take care of. And so that's what I see happening right now. It's a separation kind of the sheep and the goats type of a thing. And for those who will follow the voice of the Lord, and those who will just go back to sleep and say everything is fine. So I think we're headed now for much, much higher gas prices, much, much higher oil prices. And that's going to come over the next year to 2 years. At the same time, we will also see precious metals and commodities fly. So you can trade that. You can trade that if you believe that's the way things are going. That's a trade, and we can invest in that in some way or ways. Many people are moving to more secluded areas, mountainous areas, areas where there is land, areas where there are animals, areas where there is cattle, areas where there are crops. People have been doing this since pre-COVID. I saw Wall Street guys doing this between the world financial crisis of 2008 all the way to 2018. And it was like Wall Street went into a ghost land. And after COVID, I realized why. And then after that, other people woke up, and lots of movement is going on right now still. But I think there's been a great exodus from many regions, and people are still moving around. So I think that will continue. And I feel that those who will move this year will move in a grace period. And those that will move next year, I see an abrupt volatility next year. I see abrupt volatility. I see just people actually just who getting up and doing things like abruptly, dropping everything and moving abruptly. I see people, I don't know who those people are. It could be me. I'm just saying, I see a lot of abrupt volatility for next year as things come to some type of a climax, and we may be in WAOR at that point, or going into it, because I think we will go into it with the new president. But there may be rhetoric poured out through the news that we're going to go into that as the new president comes in. Or they may do that to Biden, and that's a very big possibility as well. He might fall off the grid, so to speak. So there's a lot of possibilities that could happen here, but the important thing is that we hear the voice of God, we follow the path of God for our life and our family, and we do what's right and safe for our lives and our family, and we build community in that. And so prepare for higher oil, prepare for higher commodities going into the next year to 2 years, and probably a world battle over the US dollar as we see the demise and the last value of the US dollar being basically squashed out of it. And we go into central bank digital currencies. So more on that in other videos. And I have a special guest coming on Friday, actually, to meet with me. Her name is Molly, and very learned, very wise woman who I recently found on YouTube, and really value her knowledge and her wisdom, but also her presentation. She's very balanced, very calm, very positive outlook, but also very realistic. She and I are going to have a talk about awakening, and I'm really looking forward to it. Nothing planned. We're just going to have a very organic conversation, and I'm going to upload it. So there's no plan to our conversation. We're just going to take it organically. So I'm really grateful to be having her. And I'll probably upload that video either on Friday night or Saturday. So I'm really looking forward to that, and very grateful that God's been opening up doors for me to connect with new people and other people and old people and people that have been in my life. And I'm looking forward to having them. I've just been getting acclimated into my job and into the region and into moving and all of that. So I'm kind of getting settled in now and just adjusting. So more to come. Thank you for listening. And for the first time, I think I'll ask if you will like and subscribe and maybe share this video if it taught you anything or was important to you. Take care.